Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys what I think are 3 books that every whiskey lover should probably read. This is just my own personal list. I have read probably at least a dozen books in the whiskey genre, right? Covering various topics, history, creation, etc. And there are 3 of them that I think stand out the most. And I'm going to list those off for you today. And as I do that, I'm going to be enjoying a nice little pour from Weller Antique 107 because Weller's one of the oldest names in American spirits. Good stuff. So I think a big part of appreciating whiskey and knowing what's good, what's not good, I think a big part of appreciating it is understanding its history and its process. Where did it come from? What's the heritage? What are some of the family names? How did it catch traction here in the United States? And then beyond that, also understanding how it is made, the various stages of whiskey creation. That's why I think being well read on the subject is a very helpful thing. And I'm going to kick things off on my list with this book, which is one of my favorites. This is called Whiskey Masterclass by Lou Bryson. So Lou Bryson was a beer writer, right? Beer connoisseur and writer, and then made the transition into being a whiskey writer. And he has been in that business for a number of years. But Whiskey Masterclass, so this book, he talks to a wide variety of people in the distillation world. He talks to American distillers, he talks to Scottish, Irish distillers as well. And this is all about the process of creating flavor in whiskey. And he breaks it down, so how is flavor created at every single stage. So he goes through the chapters of the book, basically start with selecting your grains, whether it's wheat, rye, barley, corn. Selecting your grains, doing your mash, okay, so your whole mash process. Are you doing sour mash, sweet mash, using setback? What kinds of, there's a little bit of chemistry in there too, but it's not, I'm terrible at chemistry, and I've read this book now probably half a dozen times, partially because I really like it, but partially because retaining information is a challenge for me, so I have to read things multiple times. So if I really liked a book, and I think, man, I really want to retain this information, I'll read it multiple times. So that's why I've done that. But, so yeah, every stage, your grain, your mash, your fermentation, your distillation. What kind of a still are you using? Is it a copper still, pot still? Is it a continuous column still, coffee still? Are you using a doubler and a thumper? All of those things you learn in here. And then it goes into the barreling process and the kind of wood that is selected and how you treat that wood. Is it seasoned? Is it dried? Is it kilned? Is it all of that right here? Even warehouse influence. This is so helpful. So when you go to buy a bottle of whiskey and you look at the label, you're understanding everything you see here, right? So if it says, oh, it's finished in Mizunara oak. Well, you read this book and you'll learn not only what is Mizunara oak, but where does it come from? What kinds of flavors are attributed to that kind of wood? I think that this is invaluable. That's why it's number 1 on my list today. Read this. Whiskey Masterclass by Lou Bryson. That way, when you go to pick out a bottle and you read the label, you'll understand what all those words mean. Not only that, but what they mean for flavor creation in that whiskey. So you know what to attribute when you're tasting it. You're like, oh, that's because of the wood finish that that's because of the mash bill. Definitely give it a read. Highly recommend. The other 2 books on my list are books that I own digital copies of because I read them on my phone. So I don't have a physical copy to hold up for you. Actually, this one I had an audio version first, and then I downloaded the digital version, and then I bought a hard copy because I wanted to have it just, spending a night at a hotel, and I don't want to be sitting there scrolling my phone. Sometimes I prefer to actually have a physical book. But the second book on my list today is Kentucky Bourbon Whiskey, An American Heritage by Michael R. Veach. So this book is really interesting because Michael R. Veach is a whiskey historian. Okay, so we're talking about a guy who has receipts. I mean, pay stubs, literal receipts for transactions hundreds of years ago that he has hunted down. He's a keeper of relics and museums and stuff like that for whiskey history in America. So this book is, I'm going to be honest with you, it is not all that exciting, okay? It's not like it's dressed up with great stories and eloquent monologues and fun punchlines and jokes here and there. This is information, okay? So this guy is going to give you information. And so it's kind of a slower read in that regard, but the information is very well validated. So he's gonna cut through a lot of the myths in whiskey history, which is great. So like, for example, I love Elijah Craig products, don't get me wrong, but Their bottle straight up lies to you. On the label, it says Elijah Craig, father of bourbon. It also says, first to char oak barrels. Those things are verifiably false, by the way. And Mr. Veach will tell you why. So it's actually a fascinating read. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but he has literal receipts for transactions hundreds of years ago that show you the process of how bourbon became an American spirit, that whole process. And it's not attributed to any one individual person, regardless of who wants to take credit for it. And many people have tried, mind you, to take full credit for the origins of bourbon, but it was a collective history. And it's a really interesting read in that regard. So he goes beyond that too, and talks about all the kinds of things like the rectifiers, and then on into Prohibition days, and all that went into that. So it's a fascinating read because the information is so sound and solid. So you're gonna learn a lot of the facts with Kentucky Bourbon Whiskey and American Heritage by Michael R. Veach. That's why it is second on my list. But I wanted to be upfront with you that I didn't want you to go into that book and think, this is going to be so entertaining. You're not going to laugh or smile. You're just going to get solid info. And that is going to take us to the third and final book on my list today. It is simply called Bourbon, A History of the American Spirit by Dane Huckelbridge. Now, this book is a little bit in contrast to the previous one on my list. You might think, hey, well, why do we have two bourbon history books on the list? Isn't that just going to be the same information? So, not at all. These are very different books. Mr. Huckelbridge, he has a lot of degrees. And this guy is what happens when in a video game, an RPG, if you put all of your points into two things, intelligence and charisma, which can be an insufferable combination when you have someone who is very outgoing but is also the smartest person in the room and they want you to know that. That's this guy. He can be a little bit insufferable in that regard because he's like, I am so smart and I want you to know that. But he is very over the top, and he really leans into like bourbon folklore. So, and that is part of the charm of bourbon history, absolutely. Sometimes it's not about having information that is 100% verifiable and accurate. Sometimes you just want to tell a good story, and he tells good stories. So he's going to go all the way back to when distillation first started happening. So he's going to kick off the book, not in America, not with bourbon, but with the distillation of spirits, aqua vitae by the monks in the monasteries, and when that happened and how that happened. And he's going to tell you some good stories that may or may not be 100% accurate, but they're still really fun. And then he's going to move into the American heritage and some of the big names and the major players with corn distillation and corn whiskey. And that's great stuff. Great stories there too. We're going to move into like bootleggers and Prohibition days and talking about Remus. And it's fun and it's exciting. And it's a really great read in that regard. It's going to be entertaining for you. And as you're reading it, you will smile. You will laugh from time to time. So it stands in stark contrast to number 2 on the list. And so there you have it. Those are the 3 books I believe every bourbon lover should read. And then you're going to be more equipped to understand the juice that you're drinking and having a greater appreciation for it and for the craft in general. I hope you found this video enlightening and entertaining. And if you did, hey, let me know by leaving a like on the video because that really helps it get out there in front of more people. Those are called engagements. Anytime you like a video or comment on a video, you do any kind of click on this video at all, and YouTube's going to see that as engagement, and it's going to think, oh, people are liking this video, they're enjoying it, it's getting a reaction out of them. Let's get it in front of more people. So that's really helpful. And feel free to subscribe for additional whiskey content. A big shout out to my Patreon supporters who help fund this channel and the bottles that I buy and review here. I really appreciate each and every one of you. You're my heroes. Be warm and well fed, my friends. Cheers. May you live richly and get better with age. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.